I was working with a client the other day, and he was talking about how one of his peers on the leadership team was abusive. They were just horrible. They're always angry and always stepping over the line. And my first thought, again, I wrote the book Only Tens. I talk about difficult conversations. I talk about setting boundaries. So my first instinct was to say, well, you need to let him know that he cannot speak to you that way, that that is unacceptable, that's unprofessional behavior. And I stopped myself. I thought for a second and I said, you know what? Normally, I would tell you to set a boundary. I would suggest that we nip this in the bud and say what I just said, which is, you can't talk to me like that. But I thought better of it, and I said, you know what? I don't want you to set a boundary anymore. I want you to stop setting boundaries. I want you to use this guy as your own personal gym. So every time he loses his shit with you, every time he's abusive, every time he undermines you, I want you to use that as an opportunity to find a way to get grounded and centered and respond in the most effective fashion possible. So I want you to welcome when he is out of line rather than avoid it or correct it. I want you to be able to do Tai Chi with it. Now, in order for you to be able to do Tai Chi with someone who is out of line, abusive, and crossing, that kind of thing, is you need to first understand that when someone's acting that way, it's almost always, it's always their problem. It's always their childhood trauma. It's always their fears. It's always their projection. Now, I'm not saying if you handed in a piece of work or a report or something and you made a mistake and someone comes to you and says, you made a mistake, fix this, or even a little bit angry, you made a mistake, this made me look bad, you should have checked that further. Like, again, if it's on a scale of 1 to 10, if it's a 1 to a 4, it's probably the thing, and you deserved a little backlash for not crossing your T's and dotting your I's. But if they come back and they get personal and you made me look terrible, and if they get all upset about that, and it's a 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10, it's not about you, it's about them. And once you get that, once you understand that someone who's losing their shit is now, you no longer exist, you're just a canvas to be projected on, that's when you can get your footing. Because again, we're all self-conscious of making mistakes. We never want to look bad. We never want to make someone else look bad. So we automatically go into, we're bad, we have to fix it, and we get sheepish. Or we go on the attack. We either attack ourselves or we attack them, and now we're in a fight. But if you can see that they're upset and it has nothing to do with you, the action may have been a little bit of a trigger, but they're off and running to the races for their own stuff. Now you can deal with the reality of the situation, find out what's going on with them, find out what they're scared of, what got triggered, or maybe you just need time to separate. What happens after you learn to deal with someone like that, when you become a calming influence on a person who is losing their shit, all of a sudden you become an ally. You become someone who's trustworthy. You become someone that person feels safer around, and they tend to stop losing their shit around you. They may do it someplace else, but you also will start to learn to ask the right questions. Oh, what piece of information are you missing? Or you can say, I see you're upset about that. Why don't we take a few minutes before we address it and then come back and we'll have a conversation? If you can stay grounded and centered in who you are, in your worth, uh, when someone else is doing that, you will be light years ahead than if you just set boundaries. Now, if you don't know how to set boundaries, I love it. Boundaries were my first step. Boundaries were, jacks are better to be in the business. I was such a people pleaser and such a doormat. I had to learn to speak up. But now, as I'm cultivating, I use every interaction in my life, everything that goes wrong, everything. Michael Singer, the Untethered Soul and Living Untethered, I talk about him all the time. He says, your biggest problem is not when you don't get what you don't want. It's when you get what you want, because it makes you comfortable. And it's like a drug. You want more of what you want. And the life learning is when you don't get what you want, because if you can't handle not getting what you want, then you're in prison. So if you can't handle someone being upset at you, then you're in more of a prison. But if you can handle it and you can actually calm the situation, you are light years ahead. And there is where your leadership can absolutely shine. It expands your range. It expands your peace. I listened to a guy named Jefferson Fisher, and I'm going to put a link to his Instagram and his podcast. And Jefferson's a trial lawyer who teaches people how to respond to narcissists, how to respond to criticism, how to respond to people who are undermining you, how to respond to people who are lying to you. And his job as a trial lawyer is to stay calm and play chess with people who are messing with him, or not even purposely, but just kind of to help them get to the truth. And he's it's just such a good tool. I really suggest that you add him to your LinkedIn, you add him to your Instagram, and you just get your little daily dose of how to talk to people who are not communicating in a good fashion. I promise you, this isn't easy, by the way. This is so hard. It's so much easier to attack yourself. It's so much easier to start a fight, get into an attack. It's so much easier to take the bait and get into that energy. It's so much harder to keep your own energy and keep your own self, again, grounded and centered and the most effective you can be. But it's worth it. It's worth lifting those weights. It's worth that uncomfortability. It's so uncomfortable to do that. It really is uncomfortable. But if you can learn to be okay with that uncomfortable, that discomfort, even if you do it a little bit messy, it's going to be better than if the way you were doing it before. So try not setting a boundary. Try welcoming. Try, that person is so pissed off. Wow, what can I learn from this? What can I learn about myself? What can I learn about them from this that can further the situation? I promise you, that is gold, gold, gold. I love you a ton. Have a great rest of the day.